Can you read me in the back? It's not hard to read. What I mean is, can you hear me in the back? Yes. You can. Hold your hand up. I resent that, not being able to see me. I just come back from vacation. I have a suntan. What's the matter with you? Thank you. We're pleased to have my fellow colleagues with us today. Two representatives from Puerto Rico. Both of them promised me that if I'd set up this press conference, I'd give my wife and myself and my 6 children a free vacation in Puerto Rico at the finest hotel. That's why you're here. Seriously, though, we're pleased to have 2 representatives. Most of you are aware of what took place yesterday in the Committee on Colonialism, and I'm sure you would have some questions. Now, let me make sure I'm pronouncing this right. One is Mr. Juan Brás, the Secretary General of the Socialist Party of Puerto Rico, to my left in the blue suit, and to my left, too, at my immediate left, Mr. Rubén Berrios, who's president of the Puerto Rican Independence Party. Now, I assume, as I indicated in the announcement, that everything is on the record, and if you would care to make an opening statement, and then we'll have questions, or can we go right into the questions? Would you like to make an opening statement, Mr. Brás?
Yes.
Okay.
We want to say that we are very satisfied with the resolution approved yesterday by the Committee on Colonialism, since definitely now the case of Puerto Rico is in the agenda of the committee. It is a matter now for the working group to implement the resolution in respect to Puerto Rico. So it is the first victory that we have had for the last 20 years in opening the case of Puerto Rico here in the United Nations. That has been the general understanding of both the countries that voted in favor of the resolution in the committee and the countries that abstained. And that has been certainly the understanding of the Puerto Rican people that we have been informed are very jubilant since they learned of the resolution yesterday.
First of all, I think both compañero Juan, Brás, and myself will be very glad to have the gentleman to arrive in Puerto Rico. We cannot extend an invitation to the hotels because they belong to Americans. They don't belong to us.
That's a low blow.
Yes. Now, this decision of the committee yesterday is a very great triumph for the cause of national liberation in Puerto Rico. It unmasks 20 years of United States fraud in Puerto Rico regarding the position of our island in the world community. And it portrays to the whole world the United States in Puerto Rico and their colonial allies as historical falsificators or falsifiers before the whole world. Now, the tactic of the United States at this moment is to minimize the importance or the reach of the resolution. But the resolution speaks by itself. First, it recognizes the right of Puerto Rico to self-determination and independence. And secondly, it instructs its working group to bring about the procedures for the implementation of the resolution of 1960 for the Declaration of Independence. And the implementation of the 1960 Declaration only means one thing, and I quote from the 1960 resolution: to take immediate steps to transfer all powers to the colonial people without conditions or reservations. So you can only implement the resolution by taking the steps towards the return of all powers to the Puerto Rican people. That goes even further than the first discussions in the committee. In the first discussions, they were only discussing whether to include it in the agenda or not. Now it's supposed, it's assumed, it's presumed that it's in the agenda, and and the working group is going to bring about instructions of the procedure of how to implement. So it's a bigger blow to the United States than what appeared last week.
I might initiate the questioning by asking you this. Are you of the opinion that the working group will come back with a report of sufficient strength that you'll be able to get this item on the 1973 agenda of the General Assembly?
By all means, the item will be on the agenda as soon as the report comes in. The reason at this moment why it may or may not be in the agenda of this year, it is because there's pending a report of a working group, but definitely will have to come to the agenda of the General Assembly either this year or next year.
Mr. Masaryk?
If you were to give us a poll at this time of opinion in Puerto Rico, can you hear me?
Yes.
Would you tell us what percentage of the population supports A, statehood, B, commonwealth, C, independence?
Yes. Well, let me tell you, regarding the actual figures, it is almost impossible to estimate at this moment because there is no way to do so. Now, I can assure you that there is more public support for independence in Puerto Rico than there ever was in any colony previous to its independence during the last 20 years. That is a fact for sure which cannot be denied. In Puerto Rico, a lot of people were under the impression that the actual Commonwealth status was not a colonial status. Now, when it is discovered as a colonial status or unmasked, the growth of the independence forces is even bigger than before. But I cannot give you numbers as to the polls, but I can tell you it's a very large amount of people. I could give you an example by pictures or whatever you want.
In respect to this question asked, I would like to add that the first thing we want to suggest to the committee is that they hold public hearings in the island of Puerto Rico as soon as possible in order for them to have the opinions of the Puerto Rican people. We are sure that if the committee goes to Puerto Rico, their members will see the great sentiment for independence among the Puerto Rican people, and that's why we are specifically asking them to open public hearings in the island.
Sir, would
Yeah,
you
Jeff?
invite the committee members to go and observe the upcoming elections in Puerto Rico to see what you're suggesting they would see?
We would invite the committee to go to Puerto Rico and see whatever they seem happen there, no matter what it is, including the elections, of course. Yes.
If they go and see the elections, they will realize what an election is like in a colonial nation where you have 13% of our land under American military bases, where the use is subjected to the obligatory military service of the United States, where the FBI has offices right in the middle of San Juan, where independence forces are persecuted, where they are political prisoners in the island, and where the radio, TV propaganda is so great that we cannot even hear a basketball game from Munich without listening basket in favor of statehood for Puerto Rico.
Another question?
Well, I'd like to ask the question in light of what Mr. Berrios has stated about the importance of the resolution, whether he was implying when he said that the independence movement is now not possible to estimate, but is perhaps greater than ever. Are you implying that the adoption of the resolution itself will greatly add to the impetus and the morale of the independence movement?
Yes, that,
In that case, if your answer is yes, I can well understand why you are jubilant.
what is
What is your
jubilant?
answer?
What is jubilant? I am very sorry.
Jubilant.
Ah, jubilant, yes. Yes, definitely. The answer to the question is yes. the morale of the independence forces and the growth will have a terrific impact from the resolution itself, because it is the expression of the world body specifically in charge of defining what colonialism is. The effect will be immediate. It will have an effect, an immediate effect, and a long-run effect also in Puerto Rico. My jubilance, well, my happiness is due to exactly to what you say. You know, they have been fooling our people for 20 years, trying to fool them, telling them this whole problem of Puerto Rico is solved, we're not a colony anymore, and now the specialized agency of the United Nations in charge of that, 12-0, says that it is a colony, and therefore our preaching of the last 20 years is confirmed before our people. Obviously, the morale of our people will go up, of the militants and of the rest of the population, which has been in one way or another fooled into believing that Puerto Rico was not a colony, because in Puerto Rico, the immense majority of the Puerto Ricans repudiate colonialism, whether they're members of both of our parties or for other parties. So therefore, it will have an effect in the other parties also towards pushing them to fight for independence.
In the front, yes.
To ask Mr. Berrios and Mr. Brás whether they think that independence in Puerto Rico should also be achieved by violent means.
Independence is a right of the Puerto Rican people, and it will depend on the United States government what the means to achieve independence will the people of Puerto Rico use. If the United States comply with international legislation, as it is supposed to do, and comply with the mandate of Resolution 1514 of the 1960 Assembly, there will be no necessity for violent action in any way. If the United States act in contempt of this resolution and of international legislation, then the people of Puerto Rico will certainly assert its right to independence with whatever means are available to us.
Mr. Masrick again?
No, if we...
I'm sorry. You want to...
answer Mr. Berrios also to this question.
Yes. Well, to answer this question, let me tell you first that we are dealing with the most violent nation in the whole world. You all know about Vietnam. They came into Puerto Rico in 1898 and they didn't hold the plebiscite. So to start with, the attitude of the United States in Puerto Rico has been a militaristic attitude of occupation of a land and of utilizing some colonial lackeys, they always exist, they call them Tories in the United States, to try to suppress the fight for independence of the Puerto Rican people. The party I preside believes in what we call the utilization of all means under what we label pacific militancy. Pacific militancy includes civil disobedience, the revolutionary participation in the electoral process, non-cooperation, pickets, labor strikes. Our theory is that the United States should not provoke the Puerto Ricans. We should not let ourselves be provoked into a bloodbath, because that is what they want if they needed to stay in Puerto Rico. And our whole methodology is based on the premise that we will make life impossible to Puerto Rico, to the United States in Puerto Rico, to imperialism in Puerto Rico, by the utilization of all these means. But we also realize that there are other parties in Puerto Rico that believe otherwise, and they have a right to fight for independence the way they see fit also, even though we do not abide by their methodology.
Mr. Masrick?
In this moment of what you call your happiness at the turn of events, you must be thinking of how it will be when you are independent. How do you visualize for us your relationship with the United States at that time, where more than 1 million Puerto Ricans are in this city alone? Well, how do you visualize the retention or abandonment of U.S. bases there, and of access to the United States, visas or without visas? Tell us a little about how you see that.
Both of us?
There's one of you I think would ask. We have some other questions. If you want to?
Well, we visualize to have all the normal relations that two sovereign states have in in the world today. As long as the United States respect our sovereignty, we are willing to maintain commercial and all kinds of normal bilateral relations with them. It will depend, of course, on the attitude of the United States government toward the Republic of Puerto Rico, which will be certainly an exercise of sovereignty, and we won't abide to any submission to the dictates of any foreign government.
Mr. Berrios, I'd like to interject a question here. I know figures can be tricky, but this might be in line with what Mr. Masrick has asked. How do you assess the strength and support of your movement among, let's say, the 1 million Puerto Ricans in New York, or the number that's across the length and breadth of America?
In the United States?
In those within the United States. Do you have any idea at all?
The only idea we have of that is the fact that the different independence parties have organizations within the United States, and that they are continuously in growth in here in New York particularly, but in other places of the United States, Chicago and in some places in New Jersey. And maybe a better indication of that, since it's almost an impossible question to answer in terms of numbers, is the fact of, I'm sure Compañero Juan Mari's opinion is the same regarding this, the fact that when we see Puerto Ricans in the streets in New York, in Del Barrio and so on, the constant expressions of sympathy towards the fight for Puerto Rican liberation, because they know the empire not only in Puerto Rico, but like Jose Martí said, in their own entrails. And they know that they're different, and they know they're a different nation.
Mr. Reinhardt?
If you would achieve independence, would you call back these 1 million or more Puerto Ricans from out of the New York area?
Well, see...
Did you hear the question? If you would achieve independence, would you call back the 1 million or more Puerto Ricans who now reside in the New York area?
Our party establishes in its party program that there will be a program for the return to the fatherland of the Puerto Ricans in New York who want to return. But we cannot fool ourselves regarding this type of problem. Many of the Puerto Ricans in New York have been born in New York. You might as well ask the question to the Prime Minister of Italy regarding some of the Italians who have been born here. But of course, Puerto Ricans born in the United States who are for Puerto Rican independence, Puerto Ricans who have fought for Puerto Rican independence in the United States, Puerto Ricans who have been born in Puerto Rico and now in New York will, through a normal period, which will take a length of time, have a chance to return according to economic conditions in the Puerto Rican fatherland. But it will not, nobody can think of transplanting 1 million persons to Puerto Rico right away, and nobody thinks, and it's not going to happen that way.
Jeff?
About Puerto Ricans in Puerto Rico who want to maintain a very close association with the United States. What would you do with that?
Yeah. Well, they will have to do for themselves what every foreigner has to do in a nation which is not their own, because they, they'll have to accept or reject Puerto Rican citizenship, and then we'll have rules for foreigners in Puerto Rico. This is very simple. It happened in 1917. The United States imposed American citizenship in 1917 to Puerto Rico, and they say anybody who does not accept American citizenship cannot be a lawyer, cannot be a doctor, cannot have these and those civil rights, including vote. Well, we'll do the same thing with foreigners. And if they don't want to become Puerto Rican citizens, then they'll have to stay as foreigners in Puerto Rico, or they'll have to live for the homeland. And their homeland is the country of their citizenship. But it'll be up to them, not up to us.
May I ask another question?
The one here.
Yes, Mr. Berrios, Mr. Maribra, how do you see the chances for a coalition between the Socialist Party and the Independistas?
We are acting together in a number of spheres of action, like this activity we have developed during the last few weeks in relation with the promotion of the case of Puerto Rico in the Decolonization Committee. We hope, the Socialist Party hopes, that those spheres of combined actions by the two parties will be growing steadily in the immediate future.
Yes?
Do you think that Puerto Rico will be economically a viable country?
Could we have an answer from...
Yes, yes. As my companion has said, we have been together in the United Nations we hold the theory of the Puerto Rican Independence Party that we walk separately, but we hit together. So whenever it is convenient to hit together, we hit together. And the spheres of action are many, and we will act together when it is convenient for the cause of independence, and when it is convenient to act separately, we will act separately. But we have the best relations with of respect and friendship with the Puerto Rican Socialist Party regarding a fight of independence in Puerto Rico. Regarding the economic aspects, I don't know who invented the theory where that colonizing nations are in colonies for the benefit of the colonies, you know. After all, the colonizing nations and imperial empires are not convents of nuns and priests who go preaching the Bible and taking bread to the underdeveloped countries. If the Americans are in Puerto Rico with their empire, it's because it's convenient to them to be in Puerto Rico. The thing is that the whole propaganda is made to the effect that if it were not for the Americans, we would be starving in Puerto Rico. Well, that is totally contrary to the facts of economics in Puerto Rico. When you draw the numbers of the American aid to Puerto Rico, foreign aid to Puerto Rico, but on the other hand, you add the numbers of the American profits earned in Puerto Rico, which last year were $575 million reported earnings on their own books, and more than $800 million deficit in the balance of payments with the United States, then you realize Puerto Rico is big business for the United States empire, not for the American people. And I must make that very clear, because the federal aid they give to Puerto Rico, they take away from the American taxpayer, and then they give that aid to Puerto Rico. So that in Puerto Rico you can maintain 30% unemployment and have large earnings for American companies in Puerto Rico. So what they cannot do in the United States, they do in Puerto Rico. Then they tax their own people in the United States and give surplus food so the people of Puerto Rico don't rebel. So it's a big racket for American big business in Puerto Rico, and the Republic is big business for the Puerto Rican people and the Puerto Rican workers. We're going to take over the business. That's what the Republic is all about.
Mr. Gabriel?
No, my question has been answered on the economic phase.
Okay. Is there another question? I'd like to, before we close, to ask you about this whole, the mechanics of getting this matter before the General Assembly. Surely you've made, both of you have made some evaluation, some assessment of the kind of support you have among the 132 member countries of the United Nations. What does it look like at this point in getting a majority vote to get this matter on the agenda?
We think that we should count with the majority of the General Assembly if you consider that the recently held Conference of Non-Aligned Nations that was held in Guyana, Georgetown, Guyana, a couple of weeks ago, approved in its general declaration an expression of solidarity with the struggle of the Puerto Rican people for independence and self-determination, and directed a plea to the Decolonization Committee to work on the Puerto Rican problem. 57 nations were present in that Conference of Non-Aligned Nations. If you consider that those nations are morally obligated by that declaration, and besides that, the bilateral accords that we have with several other nations, the nations in the socialist camp, you saw yesterday that the Puerto Rican issue is one of the very rare issues in which there is a complete unity of the socialist camp. Both the USSR and China were in favor of the resolution. Then we have a majority of the General Assembly for a confrontation. That is why the United States government is now evading a confrontation in the United Nations General Assembly. They could impeach the resolution of the Decolonization Committee this fall, this coming fall. They could go there and try to defeat the resolution adopted by the Committee of 24. They won't do that because they know we have a majority.
If there are no other...
Just one more, if I may. Okay. There's an aspect of the declaration to which you have linked this, even with respect to wording. I think only yesterday the United Nations press release show that the Committee of 24 had adopted a categorical principle that all military bases should forthwith be removed from all colonies. My question doubly is this. First, are you prepared to go
To make